Great. Okay. So we've covered the first part of here. Who are we at Industriens Pension, and what is our mindset? But first of all, let's talk a bit more about the benefits of a data warehouse, which is the reason why we've chosen Snowflake as a data warehouse and how we intend to use it going forward. So obviously, I think most people know this, but this is sort of a summary recap of saying, obviously we want to centralize all the data that we have available to create the single source of truth, because we come from a legacy company where there's a lot of stuff happening in production systems, which has its own difficulties in general. We also want to improve the data quality, which means that of all these production companies, production systems, we're actually looking at multiple different instances of what is a member, what is their address, and all of these things. And we need to consolidate all of this. Further going on, since all of this is still running in older systems, there is lag, basically, in saying how do we give this data to our employees, specifically to management, C-level, data scientists who are really hungry for this data but have to wait a month to get certain data sets available for them because they cannot provide something in between the month end. This in turn enables us to make better decision making. Also, when looking at Snowflake, there's the increased security that we're able to offer compared to some of the other things that we're doing, but not all of it is just that Snowflake itself provides increased security. We have additional requirements put on us that we have to abide by, which I'll return to later on. Obviously also the same with more uniform data, and also being able to access new technologies, access everything faster, and provide a better environment for employees, saying, okay, we don't have to work on an old SQL server from 2017. You're actually able to do something with AI and machine learning now. You're able to do something with models. Great. So how are we working today? And this is our base, basically. The actuariat in a pension company, as many people know, is very powerful. They have a lot of knowledge that they like to hold close to themselves, that they want to guard. Our actuariat is running on an older SaaS program, 15 years work since they did the last migration, which means we have about 880 different programs, which does who knows what, basically, because all of this is implicit knowledge in the employees in the actuariat. So basically, the main things that we're battling are variations in data sets, also in the same data set for different reports, when people do not know why. The data cannot be updated because it was designed to run once a month. It cannot handle something in between this. We're missing data in this data set because data loads are running directly from something in production and someone was locking a table at some point. This also means that since there's no documentation, whenever you do a change, you have no idea what the issue is with replicating data or what is happening upstream or downstream because of this. And then obviously we have issues with data handling. Specifically, and this maybe someone knows this, if you're running older system, you can only run last year's data because you have too much data, and it's basically too much for the system to handle, so it'll take too long, and maybe even just the memory will run out and you get a memory exception error. So this is in short our setup as it is today, which we're trying to get out of. What we really want to do is then sort of streamline this and say, okay, now we have a single source. We have Snowflake, where we're able to provide all of this data to all of our employees, also for regulatory requirements and all of this. So what you're seeing here is basically we have the overarching SaaS issue in our company, where this is the basis of reporting in every department. But it's not the only thing running because several departments have then resorted to doing something on their own in their own departments. So that means, for instance, we have an old data warehouse from the risk department, but also a new data warehouse from the risk department, which is not done yet, so they couldn't shut down the old, which means they're relying on both data warehouses and also something from the actuariat, which is an issue, to say the least. So basically, we're trying to streamline. And Snowflake, with all of the access management, all of the security, all of the things and technologies, AI, machine learning, enables us to gather everything in one place, which means that we can then just say, okay, if you want to connect to something, you need to connect to us. There's no sort of ambiguity in saying that, okay, you need to go to this database, and this database. It's all in Snowflake, and if you're in the risk department, you have access to the databases you need, to the data sets that you need, and all of this is managed centrally instead of, some is on 80 groups, intra-ID now, and some that is manually done by an administrator who has a script he's running for the last 10 years maybe. So all of this we're getting out of, basically. This also means that we can sort of streamline how you access data. Also, we're able to provide data to more systems and provide more tools for departments to use. So, for instance, we are right now, more people want to run R, they want to use Python to do data science work. Some people just want to use Excel. Fine, you can connect everything at the same time, and using the same credentials and everything across the entire setup. So what you're getting in Excel is the same you're getting in Power BI and what you're getting in Python. So looking at our setup, this is a bit more technical, which then goes into some of the issues that we're having. Specifically, one of the overarching issues is that we are the first project going the cloud way. Everything else is Microsoft on-premise in a data center, which means we've had to do a lot of work in preparing data beforehand and also managing how a disaster scenario should run out even before DORA came into the picture, which means that there are certain reports we have to be able to run to get back up and running within a single month. So that's limited us in certain technologies and setups that we use. A lot of people are really working with, say, dbt, Agile Data Engine, that they're running on top of Snowflake for a sort of low-code environment to provide data lineage and history and to really do a lot of the basic work and tasks that you're working with. This has not been possible to us due to decisions by management. So everything is running natively in Snowflake, doing all the tasks, setting up the dynamic tables, having to do streams, making sure that, okay, we cannot do specific things, that we have to put a stored procedure into a task or stream because you're not run multiple different queries in there, stuff like that. But if we're looking at this, I'll put in numbers so it's a bit easier to follow when I have to be over here. We have basically everything on the left side is our on-premise setup. So if you're looking from number 1, which is our source data, which is where the actuariat or anyone else really would go for data, that is our production setup. And everything is saying if you want something, you do a query to production. If it takes an hour, it takes an hour. Whoops, all of a sudden, membership service, they are no longer able to use the system because someone has locked the table with the memberships. So instead, we are doing something that should have been done a long time ago. We're just doing a delta. Now everyone can just run from us all day long and they won't see any issues, and production will not have any issues because everything takes a minute to load when we're getting it in, basically. We are then having 2 copies of data, and this is what I mentioned before with Azure. In number 2, we have a 1-to-1 copy of production. In number 4, we have a 1-to-1 copy of production as well, because we have to mask GDPR data. And this is all because of the decision that Azure is not safe. You cannot put GDPR data up there, basically because of the contract requirements or notices that are in their contract, saying that even though they have the EU data boundary, there are still exceptions to that rule. I think there's like 9, which means that data can still be moved out of the EU data boundary. So due to that, we're working with this, that we can then mask the data, say, for instance, you can no longer see a CPR number, before we can then move it to Snowflake. So our setup is getting everything 1-to-1 to number 2. We're masking data with number 3, putting it in number 4, and then moving everything to Snowflake number 6. So then we have everything in Snowflake. The current setup right now, with a lot of the data that is coming in, also depends on multiple departments doing stuff. We have IT ops, we have the BizTalk team, we have the development team as well. They have to move data from SFTP servers, they have to get data from an API, put it into a small database, then move it to our SQL hotel, and then it hits someone that can then use that data for reports. With Snowflake and Python natively in it, we can basically do all of that, which means that we can cut out 3 middlemen, we can just import data, and we can set update frequencies that we want. We can even put that into the department saying, okay, you can run this manually when you know that Forza, MSCI, Bloomberg, anyone else has data available for you, so you can just run it as is. Same with APIs, specifically with a lot of ESG data. Say you're using Ingestion for flight travel and you need to monitor what your CO2 emissions are for flight travels. Then you can also just run it, say, we know that they update by this point or they have a lag of half an hour, so we'll just run it like that. Then obviously we have sort of data marts that will then mostly reside in Snowflake as it is right now, but then obviously we have Power BI hooked up directly to Snowflake. And then also in number 12, you can see that is sort of the sort of an ambiguous little object of stuff where people can hook up their own tools that they want to use when they're querying data in Snowflake. Data is then still masked because data is still in Snowflake on an Azure tenant. But if we then move data down onto our on-premise environment, we can then demask the data. We found that for 95% or more, probably quite a bit more, there's no need actually for demasked data. If they have need for demasked data, it's shorter, smaller data sets that they just ask production for anyways in operational tools or reports that they have available there. Also because people should be using the policy ID instead of the CPR number to look up certain things anyway. So there's a bit of a process change in that, but we are then forcing or then nudging people for this process change by using Snowflake and then saying, oh, everything that you could ever desire is in here. You just have to look up by these other IDs instead. So to then talk a bit more about some of our issues. This is one process that is running. All of the numbers or the squares identify a single SAS program that is running. Everything around it is then a certain object. That can be a text file, CSV file, Excel file, something that is running a macro in a Excel file, or it can be a database table. So this is something that we're also working on in regards to data lineage, which, if we're moving this to Snowflake right now, they've just rolled out the new data lineage preview, which is available on table, so we'll be able to use that for developers. We have decided to go with Purview to use that as sort of connect and then provide a data lineage rollout for the entire company, going that way. But this is our first setup in regards to trying to sort of unbundle everything that happens in a SaaS world where it's basically a text file you're running and there's no overview at all, no documentation. So let me just show you the horror scenario, basically. This, oh, maybe, can you not see this? Oh. How do I stop this? Can I not go out here? Great. So the horror scenario is basically this. This is a visual representation of all our SAS scripts and all objects connected to them. So we're hoping to put this into Snowflake. This is 15 years work that they've done, and as it is right now, we're actually quite hopeful in that we're able to get it done. So this is all of these. You can see here, everything that is red is a database table. Everything else is either a SAS data object, an Excel file, CSV file, or text file, basically. So.
And how is this produced?
This was done by a Python script using a GPT-4o in our own Azure tenant after we had to mask all the CPR numbers that are embedded in the code. Yeah. So another reason why we can't put code into the cloud, because they have lists of CPR numbers and everything just everywhere in the code. Yeah. So let me go again from here. Right. But so this is the example from the actuariat. This is a bit more structured in that this is an existing data warehouse we have from the risk department that they have been working on. Some of you might recognize something here that sounds an awful lot like they're using integration services on a SQL server, which they are. The issue is this was designed 10 years ago, and someone was like, we get these files that you have to use almost one-to-one, but we want to put some dimensional modeling on top of it, so we have these dimensions and facts, which does not suit their needs, so then had to put it back into something that resembled the files. So instead, we are actually just giving them the files. We're importing everything raw. We're cutting out about 5 steps, which is what you can see in here. They're getting the files raw, can actually query the files raw if they want to. They don't need to, but they can then also troubleshoot everything they get instead of actually having to find files, XML files, on a network drive and then look through it and try to do an import. So if they're getting XML file errors, say wrong format or something like that, this is something they can fix in here themselves. And then in the end, we're doing minimal transformations for them to provide, if they want dimensions, if they want facts, but really we're able to give them just what they need in a quicker way using streams, tasks, and dynamic tables, for instance. Right. So this is a sort of slow version or a short version of what we have been working on. So just to summarize a bit, we are actually trying to replace basically all existing workflows. We now have the company, actually department, coming to us and say, when can you do this for us? And we're like, you're not prioritized. You have to wait until 2027, 26, or maybe get us some more consultants. Then we can actually try and do something about it now. Because they actually see that what we've done so far is where communication get up-to-date reporting basically on the website. They had to wait a month for before. They're actually able to work with data they get in and troubleshoot themselves instead of having to contact someone else. A mail ends up in a mailbox and the actuariat returns to it when they have time because they're so overworked that they have basically all this they have to do day to day instead of working on reports or developing reports for the company. Because there's not a lot of people outside an actuariat that knows SAS. If you do, congratulations. But those are not easy skills to acquire anymore. So by doing this, we're able to move it out of it. Then further, documentation of processes. We're moving everything from implicit documentation, really. If someone mentions the buzz factor to you, you've probably heard it. There's like a guy sitting in IT. There's one person sitting in communication who knows how this works. This is basically what we have right now. There's a buzz factor of 2, so not great. But by doing this, we can actually create some automatic documentation, see some flows, see how data is working, and actually provide warning mails, set levels of when should someone be contacted. Is it okay if something like it misses a few records? Go along, just still upload the data, but just send a notice that you need to look at this later on. So the final thing that we've really been pushing for is that now that we have this data in the cloud, data is GDPR compliant, we are actually able to use AI and machine learning for a lot of different things. Instead of worrying that we have to deploy an AI or some model locally in our data center, which takes a while. Then you have to scope out everything, you have to spec it. make sure that everything is running correctly, test everything, make sure there's no external connections where, oh, we just forgot that this actually uses the Azure language service for some reason. So we're actually able to just plug stuff in as it is right now. Yeah. So that is our use case and our joy out of Snowflake as it is right now. Yeah. Any questions?
I noticed you're not getting rid of SAS.
Closer to the map, please. Yes.
I noticed you're not getting rid of SAS entirely on your new scenario.
Yeah.
What's the reason for that? Why can't Snowflake replace SAS?
It could. The issue is that we have basically 15 years of work. So we are working towards it, but in reality, we'll probably have to say that SAS or VPS will go away when the last person who's using it is stopping at the company. It's a tough job to get rid of it. So much is running in it. People are so afraid to touch it because, I mean, they're afraid what is in it when they're looking at the scripts, basically. But everything that we can do, we're moving away. And the new people that we have, or that have been joining in the actuariat, they're also eager to use R, use Python, even a SQL server instead of SAS. Anything they can really to use other tools. It's not something you're taught at university anymore, really. You can take an elective in it if you want to, but that's not really, there's not that many people that do it anymore.
Can you say a bit more about how you mask the data? It's an external service?
No, we are masking data. I think you can see that, number 3. We're using something called Talent, which is an on-prem installation. You can also do cloud or hybrid cloud if you want to. But one of our requirements was that we had to handle GDPR data internally on-premise. So it couldn't leave the environment, which was actually a tough proposition for a lot of companies, which are now focusing on cloud or hybrid, say, you can do all of this on-premise, but data is then being transferred to the cloud and then being moved back on-premise. But they're running everything locally on a server, and so we're just using SSH2 with HMAC, I believe it is. So obviously then we have some additional requirements, say that we have the seed and we need to have a key that we're keeping in a vault somewhere that we can then roll once in a while. Which also means that if there is a data breach at some point, we can then just redo everything. Yeah.
How many environments do you have in Snowflake accounts or dev, stage, test?
We're running, right now, we are running one environment. So everything you do is production. Not ideal, to be honest. Besides that, on-premise is the issue where we are also struggling a bit. Our IT ops do not have the time to help us with it right now, but we are running a 5 environment setup as it is right now. So we have basically 2 test environments, then we have a pre-prod, and then another copy of production running at the same time, and then production. But we don't want to do that. Ideally, we would use DevOps and actually do some sort of auto validation and set up 3 environments in Snowflake is what we would like to do. Yeah.
In different accounts?
Yes, different accounts, yeah. So.
And how big is the team that you have?
Right now, we are 5 people. Yeah. So we just, besides that, we have obviously some consultants that are doing work for us. So it fluctuates a bit. Yeah.
When I joined in, you mentioned that the compliance issue of GDPR and Azure.
Yeah.
Are there the same concerns on Snowflake, given that Snowflake is not a Azure and Microsoft, but is hosted, meaning that it's still encrypted?
Well, the thing is that we're solving that in number 4.
Yeah, I was just curious if the action was needed, or you're guessing the
that is still outside of on-premise.
Yeah.
That is still in the cloud. Anything in the cloud, right as it is right now, is seen as unsafe.
Okay.
So, I mean, obviously we are aware of that, the security that goes into hosting, and like they don't want to have a data breach. The same with Azure, but from our lawyers and management, that's not allowed.
Because what we have seen is that people actually don't want to use an Azure SQL Server, but they want to use Snowflake on Azure because the extra encryption that are not on Microsoft but are on Snowflake. So it's even more secure, so it's not an issue. But just I'm curious.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm painfully aware.
Yeah. Jakob, did you have any? No.
Just a comment, I'm pretty sure that Azure cannot guarantee that data is processed in a data center that you actually use, because of capacity issues, they might process data in other data centers.
It's not even just in the data center. It's outside outside the data boundary.
Yeah.
So even though Azure will say that, okay, you are within the EU data boundary, your data will not leave. So we're not violating any international agreements. Like someone from anywhere in the world can remote into the EU data boundary, say from the US, India, Thailand, Bangkok, wherever, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I want Christian. It's a very interesting setup that you come with. Some time back, I worked for a client in Switzerland, it's a Swiss bank, which had exactly the same concerns. So my question to you is, have you considered some of these tools like SecAPI, which is basically a front end towards Snowflake, and if you have some of these very sensitive data, then that front end redirects to on-prem and look it up there, but for the end user, they cannot see the difference.
Yeah, we have
you considered these options?
Yeah, we have considered these options, and they have not been. We're not at a stage yet where we're ready to implement it, because our first customers internally mainly deal with investment data and ESG that are not, names of specific employees or anything, but like CO2 emissions and travel and stuff like that. But once we move more to specifically our pension core and put a lot of those processes in, we'll have a look at that. So it's on the roadmap, at least.
Because if you do it like this, then it will be solved for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Otherwise, thank you very much.